Every spring, when the hours of daylight grow longer and cold nights give way to warmer days, a ritual is practiced on Cate's Hill in Berlin, New Hampshire. It's a ritual that has been in one family for a century. This long family tradition of turning maple sap into syrup began with Lazare and Amanda Bisson after they emigrated from Canada. It was continued by their nephew, Armand Bisson, and his wife, Juliette. Today, their niece, Muriel Blais, and her husband, Lucien, continue the tradition, as they have for the last nearly 4 decades. Around 1880, at the young age of 15, Lazare Bisson Jr. left the family farm in the province of Quebec, Canada, with his siblings to settle in Berlin, New Hampshire. He and 2 of his brothers, Francois and Joseph, established adjacent farms on Berlin's Cates Hill, while the others lived in town. They were all part of a larger French-Canadian immigration wave. Between 1840 and 1930, it is estimated that about 900,000 French-Canadians left their homes to head south for the States. Francois established the Bisson dairy farm that was later passed down to his son Paul and operated until 1988. Lazare had the farm further up the road, which was sold after his passing in 1936. Joseph, Armand's father, established his farm across the road. Lazare brought with him a passion long prevalent in Quebec, the art of producing maple products. He first continued this practice on his farm on top of the hill. But in 1921, he and his wife Amanda realized their dream of opening their own commercial maple operation. They built a primitive sugar house down the road on the southern mid-slopes of Cates Hill. Little did they know at the time that they were laying the foundation for a long and proud tradition. A few years prior to the sugar house's opening, Joseph Bisson and his wife Odile had both passed away prematurely. Lazare and Amanda took over the caregiving of some of their children, including Armand, taking them in as their own. Armand was the youngest of his siblings to be raised by Lazare and Amanda, and was only 11 when Bisson's sugar house opened its doors. The labor-intensive business required the help of all family members. While Armand's older siblings worked in the woods gathering the sap, he remained in the sugar house, helping his mononcle Lazare while learning the craft of making the pure maple products. He soon became experienced in every aspect of the operation, and later purchased the business following the passing of Lazare in 1936. At age 24, Armand left the farm, purchased his first pulp truck, and began a lifelong career of hauling logs to sawmills and paper mills. The sugaring season coincided with an annual downtime in the lumber industry, leaving him available to continue the maple operation each spring. During mud season, trucks with heavy weight needed to stay off the roads. By the time the maple sugaring season was over, road bans were lifted and Armand could return to trucking. During World War II, Armand was drafted into the Army and spent 3 years in India, working as a dietary cook in a field hospital. These were the only 3 years that Bisson's sugar house did not open for business. Armand returned home in 1946 and married Juliette Fournier. Together they continued to manage the operation with plans and ambition to expand and modernize it. After visiting several sugar houses and carefully planning, Armand designed the present sugar house, which opened for business in March of 1953. At that time, it was considered by many to be a model design. The more spacious and newly equipped sugar house permitted him to increase his taps to 4,000, resulting in increased production. Throughout the years, Armand and Juliette continued to greet every spring with enthusiasm and welcomed countless visitors to their sugar house. They made their maple products with pride and gained particular notoriety for their maple taffy, la tire, a French-Canadian delicacy not found at most sugar houses in the U.S. even today. Their maple syrup, maple candies, and maple butter were also popular. In the 1970s, Muriel and Lucien Blais began to assist each maple season. Just as Armand had learned the art of sugaring from his uncle, The experience and knowledge began to be passed on to a new generation, to his niece and her husband. This transition period also coincided with a significant increase in industry research and innovation. This made investments in better and more efficient equipment possible. The conversion from galvanized metal collection buckets to plastic tubing began and completely revolutionized the industry. Armand and Juliette had once made their own changes and were now open to the ideas of a new generation and to new technology. Lucien and Muriel were inspired by Armand and Juliette's organizational skills, passion, and meticulous attention to detail. They were motivated by the possibilities for integrating new technologies while carrying on the long-practiced traditions they valued. They took over management of the operation in 1986. After a brief illness, Juliette passed away in 1990 at the age of 77. This was a heartbreaking loss for Armand, but his passion for sugaring remained strong, and in many ways it helped him cope with his loss. He continued to contribute his wisdom and skills at the sugar house, participating in the making of every batch of maple taffy until he was 90 years old. He could even be found splitting wood during the off-season, laying down his cane to pick up an axe. Eventually, his health declined and he became homebound. Lucien and Muriel were just beginning to tap the trees in the 83rd season of the sugar house when Armand passed away at the age of 93. He is deeply missed, but his memory lives on in all those who came to know this quiet and gentle man. Lucien and Muriel often hear his wise words as they navigate the inevitable obstacles of the season. Armand witnessed numerous advances in his many years as a sugar maker. Sap-gathering methods changed from horses to tractor and then to tubing. Evaporators started out as small, soldered flat-surface pans and evolved into today's TIG-welded stainless steel flue pans, now topped with a second pan that utilizes the steam generated from below. Reverse osmosis machines now eliminate over 75% of the water from the sap before it begins to boil, significantly reducing the amount of wood needed to fuel the evaporator. Syrup, which was once filtered through wool felts, is now processed through a pressure filter. Armand also saw his share of challenges to the operation. There were years when Mother Nature was on his side, and other years when there were struggles. In January of 1998, an unusual and devastating ice storm ravaged the higher elevations of northern New England and eastern Quebec. The Bisson sugar bush did not escape its wrath. With many of the trees destroyed or severely injured, the sugar bush eventually had to be cut. The leasing of a less affected sugar bush just 2 miles away has permitted the business to continue, with 3,300 taps. The story of Bisson Sugar House is one of tradition and survival. The year 2021 marks the 100th anniversary. Every spring, the steam still bellows from the sugar house cupola, and Lucien and Muriel still welcome visitors, as Lazare and Amanda and Armand and Juliette did before them. The sugaring process continues to intrigue young and old alike.